I'm doing one thing really stupidly that I should stop doing. It's like, how long is it going to take you to figure out what that is? It's about 2 seconds, right? You've known it forever. And you could even make it less demanding. You could say, there are some stupid things that I'm doing that I know are stupid and wrong, that I could stop doing, that I would stop doing. And then you can just start with that. And you can just do that. And maybe it's just a little thing, although it's not, because it's a step forward on the proper voyage. It's not a small thing. And you think, well, what would happen? You could say, let's do this for a year or even a month. Just try not to do things you know to be stupid and wrong for a month. And that means not to say things you know to be stupid and wrong as well. Maybe that's the most important thing. Just do it as an experiment. See what happens. And it's so fun because I have people writing to me from all over the world who are saying they're doing that. They're saying, well, you know, I cleaned up my room and then I stopped saying stupid things and my God, it's like things are way better. It's like, who would have guessed it? You know? And so it's low-hanging fruit, man. Because that's the other thing. If there's a lot of things wrong with you, then it's really easy to start fixing it, you know? There's so much territory that you can inhabit. I've had people come to me who have had very chaotic and ill-spent lives, let's say, who were in that neighborhood of age, and it's true for people who are older as well, who then decided to make a real effort and to try to make where they were better, you know, instead of being bitter about where they weren't, because that's the bitterness that really does you in. It's really not good. It's the opposite of gratitude. It's the manifestation of resentment. It makes you malevolent. It's very, very bad to be bitter. It's hell to be bitter. And if you're 40 and you're not successful, then you have to accept your lot and you have to start to improve what's right in front of you. And if you do that, it doesn't take very long. It's quite interesting to watch people. Things can be a lot better in 6 months and they can be way better in 2 years. Like, it's a struggle, uphill struggle, but it's by no means impossible. And I don't know, again, what the limit of that is. I suppose it depends to some degree on the degree of your commitment. But anyway, so it's another indication of the real validity of this story. God isn't setting this up to be easy, right? Abraham's old, and his wife is old too, and more than that, she's barren. How is he going to be the father of nations? How is he going to be successful? Well, the initial departure point is insufficient, radically insufficient. And that's very inspiring, because it means that you can start from where you are.
People ask me what it's like to be on tour with you.
Yeah.
I always say, well, he takes life seriously, and it's making me take life more seriously, and I think it's making these people take life more seriously. Do you remember the moment that happened?
Yes.
Can you tell me that moment?
Yes, I can. Yeah. So it was in, I think, 1983. And this is a strange story. I came home from a party, university party, and I wasn't in the best mood. I've always had a certain proclivity towards depression, which I've recently discovered is probably an autoimmune problem. In any case, I'd gone to this party and I'd had a lot to drink, because I like to drink. And I don't know, I wasn't happy with something that happened at the party. I wasn't happy with the way I behaved. I mean, that's not uncommon, right? If you like to drink, then you're not happy with the way you behave. Those things just go together. And so, but it was deeper than that. It wasn't just that I was unhappy with the way the party had gone, but I was deeply dissatisfied with how I was oriented in life. Like, I felt that there was it was a nihilism, I suppose, that was gnawing at me. This was not long after I'd worked for a socialist party in Canada for a while when I was a kid, and this wasn't long after I stopped doing that, and so I kind of lost my moorings, and the Christianity that my mother practiced in particular, I'd abandoned that when I was like 13, and so I didn't have any structure to orient me at all, and so I was experimenting a little bit with artistic production at this point, not a lot, but a bit, and so I took out this canvas from my
my closet, and I sat down and I sketched out this picture, and I just let my imagination roam. And what came out was it was a crucifixion, and there was I drew a picture of Christ on the crucifixion, but with a very judgmental face, very angry face, and with a snake wrapped around his waist. And it was a really harsh picture. It was like an expressionist picture. Not that I have the talent of an expressionist, but that's what it was. And I thought, I mean, I wasn't thinking, I didn't think that I was thinking in religious terms at that point at all. And I was an absolutely sporadic churchgoer, and I was absolutely shocked by this picture. I thought, where the hell did this come from? What did that possibly mean? It took me years to figure out what it meant. I mean, really, one thing, so I'll tell you part of what it meant. So Carl Jung said something very interesting about the structure of the New Testament. He said that the gospel Christ is fundamentally, although not entirely, fundamentally a figure of compassion. But the ideal is not only compassion. The ideal is also a judge, because an ideal is a judge. Let's say you have an ideal. Well, it's a judge because you don't live up to it. And so your ideal is always looking at you like you're not what you should be. And the higher the ideal, the more judgmental the judge. Well, that's why he thought the book of Revelation, first of all, emerged as an unconscious revelation, which because Christ comes back at the end of time, so the story goes, as the ultimate judge, and virtually no one is judged acceptable. Well, why? Well, because by the highest possible, speaking psychologically, even biologically for that matter, the idea of Christ is the instantiation of the ideal as such. That's what it is. Now, it might be more than that, but that's what it is. It's whatever a human being would be if a human being was perfect. And it's an effort of our collective imagination to represent that symbolically, which we do with cathedrals, for example, when we paint the image of Christ against the dome that represents eternity itself. That's the ideal. Now, you might say, well, I don't believe in the ideal. It's like, you're missing the point. So that ideal is a judge, and the farther you are away from that ideal, the harsher the judge. And so the snake was part of that, because the thing is that if you're low enough and the ideal is high enough, the ideal itself is so judgmental and so detached for you that it starts to look to you like your enemy. And so that was the painting. And it was like, and I was asking a question, that was the thing, I was asking a question. I was asking, like, what would I have to do to set this, what would I have to do to set the situation that I'm in right? And so then I drew this picture, and the picture had the answer. I mean, artistic production always has the answer. That's where the answers come from, and so that was a manifestation of imagination. It was part of me attempting in its symbolic mode of personified thinking to deliver a message. And so I swore that night that I was going to do whatever it took to set myself right, period, whatever. And I was dead serious about that. And so that was the moment. And then I don't know what I did with that picture. I hid it in my closet because I was so freaked out by it. I thought, what the hell is this? It's like some schizophrenic nightmare. It's like underneath the covers with that thing. But it wasn't long after that I wrote the first essay that eventually turned into this Maps of Meaning book. It was a poem to begin with, actually. That was how it came about first. So that's when I decided to straighten myself out.
It's very difficult to properly organize your immediate environment. And that's another thing I try to do with the books, is show that some of these so-called simple things, clean your room. It's like, I'll tell you, this is the truth. I've been trying to organize my office for 3 years. I was flooded by so much mail and so much catastrophe that I fell way behind in my ability to keep my closet organized, my clothes organized. I had 3 years worth of mail sitting in my office at the university, thousands of pieces of mail. And it took a lot of work to And it's still not done. I hope I'll have my damn room clean by the time I go out on tour, for symbolic purposes, among other reasons, to have my house in order and beautified again as well. But I like to show that simple things aren't so simple, especially if you try them. You know, I had one client, his mother had died, and there was a large family, and the family kind of fell into disorder after she died because it was all boys, it was all sons and a father. And no one had really picked up the maternal role, you know, the necessary stereotypical maternal role. And he decided he was going to try to do that. And man, you know, his brothers and his father, they weren't happy when he first went to get groceries. You know, they felt that he was kind of trying to take the place of the mother, so there was all that grief that was still there. And then who the hell did he think he was, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, people's houses aren't in order because that's really hard. It's really hard. And it causes a lot of chaos and strife to try to do it. And so usually it isn't done, and it isn't till you actually try it, like right down to the detail, that you start to understand how difficult it is, and then also how to appreciate. You also start to appreciate how necessary it is. So it's fun shedding light on that sort of thing, and the non-triviality of the ordinary. And part of the reason I concentrate on the individual is because I don't think the things we do are trivial. If you think the things you do are trivial, then you're either bringing a trivial attitude towards them, or you're doing things that you're not doing the things you should be doing, or you're not framing the situation appropriately. So, and you know, you might dispute that, and that's okay, you could, but you know, one thing that my depressive clients, for example, would say, I can't really figure out why anything is worth doing if we're all going to die in the end. It's like, you know, it's fair enough. But I said, I think it was last night in my lecture, I said, if a baby's crying in front of you and you know it's cold or hungry, you don't cease to attend to its distress because the sun is going to envelop the earth in 4 billion years. You think, that's not a good excuse. Well, why not? Why not use that time frame? And your instinctive answer is, well, that's just not the appropriate time frame. And so I would say, well, if you have the habitual inclination to apply to your own life a time frame or an evaluative framework that reduces what you're doing to meaninglessness, then you should consider whether or not you're using the wrong time frame. Right? If it all of a sudden becomes meaningless, pointless, you're suffering in the work you have to do, well, find a time frame that is appropriate, you know, sufficient unto the day, let's say. That's a good start.
I was talking to one of the leaders of the Conservatives this morning, and they're asking me about, the person was asking me about Bill C-16, but more specifically about talking to young people, because the Conservative leadership struggle is going on right now. I've been talking to a bunch of them, and I said, well, look, one of the things you could do for young people that no one's doing is to talk to them about responsibility. Because everyone talks to young people about rights. It's like, we need our rights. It's like, oh God, how many rights do you need? You know, really, like you have more privileges than any people who've ever lived anywhere. Well, it's so dull to hear that. It's so dull. It's so pathetic and what would you call it? It's so demeaning that you have to be protected and have your rights. It's like I said, there's a huge marketplace for responsibility. That's what you want to talk to young people about. It's like, get your act together and do something worthwhile with your life. For the first time in my entire adult life, the Conservatives actually have something to sell young people, right? They could sell them responsibility. It's like, well, why? Because that's where life has meaning with responsibility. The more responsibility you take on, the more meaning your life has. And the higher degree of responsibility that you agree voluntarily to try to bear, the richer your life will be. And no one's ever told that, and it's the case. You know, it's like you have 4 kids, say. Well, that's plenty of responsibility. You're going to have meaning. It's going to be rough, you know, because it's complicated. You have a complicated job, and you try to help the careers of the people around you. You try to solve tough problems and aid suffering and do all of that. It's like, it's weight, it's responsibility, but there's glory in it. There's real glory in it. There's deep meaning in it. And